All right, first video of the new year, first video in the new apartment. And don't get used to how things look right now. It's going to be a while before all the furniture gets here, but I didn't want to wait to post something until that happens, so here we are. And because it's the start of the new year, I thought we'd start off things a little bit spicy. Because if this fandom continues in the direction that it's going, things are going to look a lot different for furries this year. In fact, in 2025, I'm predicting there will be five major shifts that will really change how furries connect, gather, and express themselves. From skyrocketing convention attendance to heated debates about age restrictions, I really think these changes are really going to be foundational for how the fandom looks, meets, and interacts with each other going forward. Let me explain. And let's start with something fun and take a look at the big furry conventions in the United States. Right now, Anthrocon and Midwest Fur Fest are the top dogs, drawing tens of thousands of furries each year. But the con that's been stuck in third place for the past half a decade has really started to shake things up. And I wouldn't be surprised if Furry Week in Atlanta starts to cement itself as the new IT con for furries to attend, especially here in the United States. FWA has been growing like crazy. In 2022, they had just over 7,000 attendees. Yet just 2 years later, that number jumped to over 15,000. That's some serious growth, especially compared to other cons at that size. And it's not by accident. Furries have been raving about FWA's energy, how well organized it is, and how the location lets you focus on the con and not worry about other things like where you're gonna get something to eat. Now, I'll be honest, I think by 2025, FWA will actually pass Midwest Fur Fest in attendance. And I think it will do so pretty easily. It only needs about 1,800 more attendees, and if last year's growth is any indication, it'll do that pretty quickly. In fact, if you look at it, it only needs about 2,600 new attendees to pass last year's Anthrocon as the largest furry convention of all time. But we'll see if it holds on to that title for more than a month and a half. But either way, this con's growth in particular is a big deal, and we'll see if it continues to handle the growth and how other cons of this size respond to this friendly competition. Now, you might be thinking, Finn, if the big cons are growing, surely that's where all the action is. And to that I would respond, well, not so fast, because there's a plot twist coming that even I didn't see coming until pretty recently. While the big mega cons are getting all of the attention, there's a quiet revolution happening in the furry world. More and more furries are looking for smaller, more intimate gatherings. It's not that they don't love the big energy of big cons, but sometimes you actually want to talk to people without shouting over a crowd, you know? And there's many instances of this happening all across the world. I don't know, take furry migration in Minnesota, for example. It's been growing steadily, but last year's edition had a pretty sizable jump compared to the attendance in 2023. I know a couple people who have gone to that and have said that's their new favorite con now, and it makes sense. They can actually see their friends more than once and find spaces within the con itself to do things with them, all without getting too bored. Or, I don't know, look at Camp Farrell in Ontario, Canada. It's literally a summer camp for furries. Now, I know it ain't cheap, but I think it's a good example of these smaller cons that are starting to offer more unique experiences that you just can't get at the bigger events. But here's the thing, as these smaller cons grow, they face some real challenges. It's not easy to scale up while keeping that intimate vibe. Now, that's not to say that some cons don't manage it well, while others not so much. I've seen a few promising events struggle when they get too big too fast. So we'll see. I think in 2025, we're going to see a boom in attendance at these smaller, more well-organized cons. Furries are going to be all about these more personal experiences this year, but that's not the only way furries are going to be connecting. In fact, there's this whole new frontier that's been opening up that I think is really going to have its moment this year. Imagine a world where you can attend a furry convention or hang out with all of your furry friends that are spread all across the world, all without ever leaving your living room. It might sound crazy at first, but it's not just possible, it's already happening. And I think this type of interactivity has a real possibility of revolutioning the ways furries interact, especially in 2025. Let's talk about VRChat. It's not just some online game. In many ways, it's a game changer for the furry community. Picture this, you're walking through a virtual world, your persona fully realized in 3 dimensions, interacting with other furries from all over the world. It's like a 24/7 furry convention, but without the travel costs or the need for an expensive fursuit. This is what's happening over in VRChat, and there's already tons of furry-specific worlds in the space as well. You got dance clubs where you can show off your moves, cozy lounges for chill conversations, and even full-blown convention spaces. I've seen furries host art shows, dance competitions, and even virtual fursuit avatar parades in these spaces. It's pretty wild. Now, I don't have the exact numbers, but from what I've seen, more and more furries are jumping into VRChat every day. And honestly, why wouldn't they? A decent VR setup is way cheaper than a fursuit and con tickets. Plus, you get real close to the real-time interactions with friends without actually having to be there. In fact, for me personally, I've made it a personal goal to learn more about the whole VRChat side of the fandom, as I think it's almost a fandom in and of itself. I plan to do a couple videos on this, so be sure to subscribe if you haven't already so you don't miss any of them when they come out. But for now, here's what I think. In 2025, VRChat is going to be one of the primary ways furries connect and socialize. Now, it's not going to replace the real-world meetups entirely, but it's definitely going to change how we think about furry gatherings, especially as the cost of travel, fursuits, and just living continues to grow. Now, we've been talking about these large gatherings of furries, and even the smaller cons we've been talking about are still pulling thousands of people. And sure, you might think that bigger is always better when it comes to furry events, but what if the heart of the fandom actually beats the strongest in smaller, more intimate gatherings? If you've been paying attention, you've noticed that there's a growing trend that's exposing a different way of furries to socialize, and I think it's really going to skyrocket in popularity within the community this year. For years, the public image of the furry fandom has been all about these big conventions and massive meetups, but lately I've noticed a shift. More and more furries are organizing smaller get-togethers. We're talking cozy movie nights and sleepovers, fursuit walks, picnics in the park, or even bringing a bunch of friends together for a long weekend in a cabin in the woods. These smaller events are becoming super popular, almost in response to the rapid growth of the larger furry events. It's all about creating those close connections and shared experiences, something that was a lot easier to do back when cons were moderately sized, but is increasingly becoming more and more difficult as the fandom at large continues to grow. And I think we're also seeing that it's not really all that tricky to set things up. It's a lot easier to plan and manage a small group to get together. You don't need a huge budget or manage a team of volunteers. It's just a bunch of friends working together to enjoy each other's company. Plus, in smaller groups, people will tend to open up more. You could really get to know your friends even better without the overwhelming crowds of a big convention. So in 2025, I'm pretty certain we're going to see way more of these small group furry events. Heck, I'm planning a few myself. And again, they're not going to replace the big cons, but they're definitely going to become a huge part of how furries connect. Now, all of these changes in the fandom are great, at least in my opinion. Watching the fandom shift in how its members interact with each other personally fascinates me. But it's also bringing up some new challenges that we need to talk about. And there's one issue in particular that's getting a lot of attention lately, one that's probably not as whimsical to talk about, but is still really important. Right now, the furry fandom is pretty open when it comes to age. We've got teens and adults mingling at cons, chatting online, and simply sharing space in the fandom. It's been like this for a few years, and for many, it's part of what makes the community so special. But lately, along with this explosive recent growth, there's been a lot of talk about whether there's a need to rethink this approach. Some furries are starting to argue that we need stricter age separation to protect younger members from the flourishing adult side of the fandom and avoid any potential issues that comes with that. While others say that the age restrictions would go against the inclusive spirit of the fandom and could alienate younger furries from finding a home in this community. It's a tough debate, and both sides have pretty valid points, which is why I don't actually think this qualifies as drama, but a bit of discourse this fandom actually has to reckon with. Those in favor of this age separation points to the fact that this fandom is a place for not just fans of anthropomorphic animals, but sexual expression and positivity, a lot of which is exclusive to adults only. But on the flip side, those against the separation say it could be harder for younger furries to fully participate in the community, something that wasn't a problem for a lot of the same furries calling for this separation. All of this is to say, in 2025, I think this is going to be a hot topic in furry circles. I think we're going to see a lot of heated discussions, maybe even some more conventions experimenting with age-restricted areas or events, more than those who experimented with them last year. It's a complex issue, and there's no easy answer, but one thing's for sure, how we handle this will have a big impact on the future of this fandom. All right, let's wrap this up and take a look at what we just covered. I'm predicting there will be 5 big changes coming to the furry fandom in 2025. Furry Week in Atlanta is set to become the new It Con for furries, while smaller cons are going to see a huge surge in popularity. VRChat is going to continue to revolutionize how furries hang out online, and at the same time, we'll see more small friend group activities in the real world. And of course, the age integration debate that's going to be on everyone's minds throughout all of this. Now, I'll be honest, the furry fandom is changing fast, like really fast. But here's the thing, we don't just have to sit back and let these changes happen to us. We as community members can really shape the future of our fandom. That's what makes a fandom special. So what can you do? Well, we could talk about it. It's fully okay to share your ideas and thoughts on these topics without having to tear the opinions of others down. You can also get active and organize events if you haven't been invited to some already. The furry fandom has always been about creativity and community, and that's not going to change. If anything, it's going to evolve even further. Though it is up to us to make sure the fandom in 2025 is one that we all want to be a part of. All right, thanks for watching. I'll catch you on the next one, but until then, stay wild out there. Peace.